Rob from Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Necron Immortal. If you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon page is linked below. Now onto the video. So this is the finished Necron Immortal that we're going to be working on. It's a reasonably basic paint job like you do with the Warriors and things like that, because they are fairly regular and standard troops and you may have a lot of them in the force. But it looks great on the tabletop and it's very easy to do. The first colour that we're going to use is Citadel Black Templar Contrast. I'm going to use this to paint all of the black areas on the Necron itself. Now if you want to, you can use any black paint, like Chaos Black or what have you, but I tend to use the Black Templar on Necrons just because there is so much black and some parts are a bit tricky to get to, and because it flows easier and it's a lot thinner than normal black paint, it's just easy to stick on and get that layer on there. Once you put the highlights on, you can't really tell the difference anyway, and if need be, you can always put a second layer on very easy. So now that we've got the black on, we're going to use some Citadel Canoptek alloy. I'm going to use this to paint the shoulders and also the face of the Necron. This is the lighter shade kind of Runelord brass. So once you finish painting it, the shoulders and the face will be a lighter colour than the rest of the Necron. Next is Citadel Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to use this to do the blade and some of the pieces on the Gauss weapon there, the Gauss blaster. This is just generally to break up all of that black that's on there. That done, we're now going to use a little bit of Citadel Fulgurite Copper just to do the little part here, a bit below, and the same again on the underside too. Now we are going to use some Vallejo White, but whichever white you use is fine. I'm going to use this to do the band down the front of the Necron's head, also the tubes on the front of the Gauss blaster, and then the pattern down each barrel, and the two tubes that we haven't painted yet on the back of the Necron. We'll use a tiny little bit on his eyes. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Biel-Tan green, and this is going to be to darken some areas where we painted the white. So here you can see me adding some to the barrels. I wouldn't actually do this. At the end of the video I go back and I just paint those white again, so it's just one constant sort of Tesseract glow colour. Because what I was hoping to do here is have it so that it sort of went dark to light to dark to light, but that didn't work out and it just looked like a bit of a shabby mess. Looks a little bit better on these big tubes, so I left those as are, but those barrels, I just keep them one constant white colour across the length. But use the Biel-Tan green to do certain areas on those white sections, on the tubes, to make them stand out. We're now going to be using Citadel Nuln Oil just to go over all of the Iron Hand Steel. Next is Citadel Agrax Earthshade. Just going to use this to do the Fulgurite Copper sections, like the coils on the back of the Gauss blaster. We're now going to use some Citadel Apothecary White, and this is going to be just to do the stripe down the front of the Necron's head there. For Citadel Tesseract Glow, technical paint. I'm going to use this on the patterns down each barrel and the tubes that we painted white and Biel-Tan green. As I say, I did just go back over the barrels and paint them white, do Tesseract glow and then paint over them using the blacks and the greys to highlight. Because once you've painted those blacks and greys back on to colour the barrels themselves, where those dark Biel-Tan green sections are, they do actually kind of muddy it and make it up a little bit so it doesn't look quite as crisp. So now I'm going to use some Cryptek Armourshade gloss. We're going to use this to do all of the Runelord brass and Canoptek alloy sections on the Necron. So I'm going to start working with Citadel Runelord brass again now and reapply some of the colour on the Necron's armour plates. So what I try and do as well is I'm trying not to do 100% coverage with this, as the shade for the Necrons is quite glossy and quite patchy. It helps make them look a bit weathered, and whereas the new Necron Warriors have all the battle damage and things like that, the Immortals tend not to. So using the Runelord brass a little less smooth than you usually would does give it that rough and worn look, so that they kind of blend in with the rest of the Necrons quite well. So we're using Canoptek alloy from Citadel here to do the shoulder pads and the head. We're also going to use this to highlight the areas on the Necron's armour where it would be catching more light, just to lighten those up a little bit. We're now going to use some Vallejo Modeler Chrome to do some edge highlights on the sections where we used the Iron Hand Steel earlier on. We're also going to do some edge highlights on the armour plate of the Necron. It's an ideal way of just making those edges stand out. You can see that on the silvery metallic there. You can use that on the Necron's armour plate as well to get those to stand out, and maybe highlight some areas under where the Cryptek Armourshade gloss is a bit patchy. So if you have any darker shades, you could highlight underneath that with a little bit of Model Air Chrome, and that will give you that kind of dented look to it as though it's catching the light. So now I'm going to use a little bit of Vallejo Black, and we're just going to colour in this kind of armour on the barrel. As you can see, once this starts getting done, and you'll see in the next couple of clips as well, it doesn't look quite as nice as I'd like it to. So at the end, I just go back and get rid of that Biel-Tan green by painting all those little details in white again, using the Tesseract glow again, and then building up the layers that I'm working on here. So we're going to use black to do all these parts and to touch up any areas that you might need to on the Necron. We are then going to use Vallejo German Grey, and we're going to do highlights on the areas that will be catching the light. So if you think about the light coming down from above, you're going to be using the German Grey on all those areas that we painted black earlier on, just to make those stand out and have those highlights on there. There are quite a few little details that break up the shape of the miniature when you're putting these on. His hands in particular have loads of different segments. On the Gorse weapons as well, you have all those tubes and different bits poking out, so you can get some nice details on them as well. We're going to do final edge highlights on all the black and grey areas using Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey. This is an ideal one for highlighting the edges without making it too blatant. As always, I try and keep anything that's black on a miniature as black as it possibly can be, just because I don't want it to turn into grey too much. We're now going to use Vallejo Modeler Chrome once again. This is just to do some little bits that look a little bit like pistons on him, and also the badge on the front of his chest. Now, the little piston bits, I always do the outside part of the forearms, the outside kind of tube on the forearms, and also the outside one on the lower leg too, on the shin there, just because it breaks it up a little bit and just adds a little bit of a different colour. I imagine it to be a little bit kind of shiny from where it's moving around. Now using a little bit of Vallejo White just to paint that stripe on the top of his head there. I'm also going to use this just to do a tiny little edge highlight on the kind of lower lip of the eye, on the outside edge there, part of the kind of metal skull. And then we are just going to use a tiny little bit of Citadel Tesseract glow once more, just to put a little bit of that Tesseract glow in the eyes and on the kind of eyelids there, just to make those look like there's a little bit of light coming out from there. Also just touching up certain bits of that at the end there. But as I say, I redo that, as you'll see in the rotating image, which follows onto this bit. I have repainted the details white, so there's no Biel-Tan green there anymore. And then Tesseract glowed it again and repainted those shaded parts, the armour plates, the black and the greys on top of that. So this is the finished miniature. You can see that the barrel is looking a lot brighter. The tubes are looking well with the glow, and there's slightly different shades on there. That works because I think they're a bigger area. But it's a quick and easy method of painting up your Immortals, getting them looking great on the tabletop.
Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to our other social media, linked below. Thanks very much.
Like the channel, enjoy the content, and you'd like to support me, my Ko-fi and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.